Everyone, it's a very special pleasure for me tonight to have this opportunity to stand before you and help introduce one of the great legends of our game. Known as the Big O, quite possibly in the conversation very strongly as the greatest player of all time. It doesn't get any better than that, right? Oscar is first recipient of this award that was not born or raised in the state of Ohio. He was actually born in Tennessee. He was raised in Indianapolis. Played for Crispus Attucks High School, had an unbelievable career. Small sidelight to Oscar's career, his sophomore year, the state championship, they lost in the semifinals to Milan High School. That same Milan High School that inspired the movie Hoosiers. Now, Oscar told me tonight, had a couple of football players not been injured, you'd never heard of Hoosiers. But it did happen. But they didn't take it laying down. They got even. The next 2 years, they won the state championship going away. They won 45 straight games in the next 2 years, only losing one, won 2 state championships, and Oscar was Mr. Basketball in the state of Indiana, which is still a very revered honor. Then enters the state of Ohio. Oscar decides to enroll at the University of Cincinnati, as most of you in this audience well know. Couldn't play as a freshman. None of us in that era were allowed to play your freshman year. He didn't come on the basketball scene collegiately till he was a sophomore. And he came on like no other person before him. Oscar, in his career at Cincinnati, was a consensus first-team All-American all 3 years. He led the nation in scoring all 3 years in college. His career average at Cincinnati was 33.8 points per game. That is putting the numbers together. That's when I first heard of Oscar Robertson. And Oscar, I'm not going to date you or me, but I was in junior high when this guy started at Cincinnati. And I was in a small television market. I grew up in the city of Dayton. We had 2 channels, 2 and 7. Cincinnati was a larger market. They had 3 channels, 5, 9, and 12. And if I got the antenna just right next to the window, I could watch Oscar Robertson play in the Missouri Valley. It was kind of snowy on a black and white TV, but boy, you could tell what this guy was getting done. Absolutely phenomenal. Played in 2 Final Fours. He was a College Player of the Year. Along the way, he set 19 University of Cincinnati records and 14 NCAA records. He was the #1 pick in the NBA draft. Back then, they had what they called a territorial draft. Oscar went #1 overall and went to the Cincinnati Royals. And he just continued what he'd done in college. Most guys have that year of adjustment, not Oscar Robertson. He was Rookie of the Year, averaged over 30 points a game. In his second year in the league, he was the first and only player in the history of basketball to average a triple-double. 30.8 points, 12.5 rebounds, 11.4 assists per game. Now, as phenomenal as that is, what's more telling to me is the fact that if you average Oscar's first 5 years in the NBA, he averaged a triple-double for 5 years. Now, some years he didn't average a double in something, but the next year he exceeded it by so much that he actually averaged that triple-double for 5 years of his career. His first 9 years, he was first-team All-NBA every single year. He played in 12 All-Star games. He was the MVP in 3 of them. He was MVP in the league. And then the Royals did one of the most amazing things any team could ever do. And I was in New York at the time, and they traded Oscar Robertson to the Milwaukee Bucks. Astounded everybody, probably astounded Oscar. But he met up with a young guy by the name of Lou Alcindor. In their second year, in 1971, Oscar won the NBA championship. Now, everybody said, well, it was probably because Lou Al was so gifted, and he was gifted. But a couple of years later, they lost another year in the finals to Boston in a 7-game series. Then Oscar retired. Lou had changed his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, which we all know him more recently as, and they were 6 games under 500 without Oscar Robertson. So this guy made a little bit of a difference. After college, by the way, I should mention, Oscar played in the 1960 Olympic Games, winning the gold medal in Rome. The greatest Olympic team of all amateurs of all time. And I had a chance to play in '68. It was still all amateurs. We didn't start adding all the professional players until we didn't win the Olympics. And then we decided, hey, we got to change that because we're playing against the other country's pros. Oscar was a co-captain. He was the leading scorer. They played for Pete Newell. A fair team: Terry Dischinger, Oscar, Jerry West, Jerry Lucas, Walt Bellamy. 10 of the 12 players ended up in the NBA. And what's interesting about that, the only Olympic team that's ever been enshrined in the National Basketball Hall of Fame. Just a great team. They won those Olympics by an average of 42 points a game. That's somewhat dominant. So this guy has done absolutely everything you can do in our sport. And he's been an absolute credit to the game. Oscar's in the National Hall of Fame. He was enshrined as an individual in 1980, first year that he was eligible. The College Basketball Coaches Association in the year 2000 named Oscar Player of the Century. The first class of the College Basketball Hall of Fame, Oscar Robertson was one of the 5 people selected. And think about this class for a minute. Oscar Robertson, Bill Russell, Coach Dean Smith, Coach John Wooden, and James Naismith, the man who invented the game. Does the company get any better than that? The Basketball Writers Association, the College Player of the Year, their trophy is named in the honor of Oscar Robertson. 26,710 points in his career. Greatest individual talent I ever had the opportunity to be on the court at the same time with. Best all-around player we had ever seen. So with that, Oscar, if you can make your way up here, we've got a short video we want to show, and then we're going to chat with this guy for just a minute. Our recipient of the Ohio Heritage Award, Oscar Robertson.
Oscar Robertson of the Cincinnati Royals, a truly gifted player, fantastically alert for rebounds, the 3rd highest scorer in the NBA, and one of its very finest playmakers.
There were a lot of players when I started playing basketball, especially in the pros and also in high school, were just as big as I was. But I could handle the ball, dribble the ball, make the passes. I tried to help other people.
Oscar Robertson would find many ways to help his teams win. He was a shooter with deadly precision, a tenacious and fearless rebounder, and a playmaker with extraordinary passing skills. At 6'5", Oscar was the game's original big guard, dominating the court with a combination of power and grace.
His skill level was so high, the little feints, wonderful ability to handle the basketball, plus his size, he was big.
To play against Oscar at 6'5", probably 220 pounds, he was a force. I knew that if I had to play Oscar, the best that I could do was try to hold him under 25 points a game.
Oscar's the best player I ever played against. I mean, the guy did not have a weakness.
As an African-American athlete in the 50s and turbulent early 60s, Oscar was by definition a pioneer.
I came up in an all-black environment in Indianapolis, Indiana, an all-black high school. We played in predominantly all-white schools. There were a few blacks on some of the schools, and you're downtrodden to begin with, so you want to win. You want to win to get you out of a situation.
And when he became the first black basketball player at the University of Cincinnati, the obstacles he faced only fueled his determination.
I didn't think anyone could stop me. I didn't think anyone could keep you from your goals.
Entering the NBA with the Cincinnati Royals in 1960, Robertson quickly made his mark as one of the league's best young players.
He did not look like a rookie. I mean, I played like a rookie my first year. He did not.
Oscar Robertson.
I had to guard Oscar. I'd never seen him play. Frank Shelby and I were starting guard. And he told me in the locker room before the game, he said, "You're going to guard the greatest basketball player who ever played this game." That's a pretty strong statement. And he was talking about Oscar Robertson. And you know what? He was right.
Just 2 years later, he incredibly averaged a triple-double for an entire season, a feat that's never been duplicated.
I don't know if it could have happened today. He sort of ran the show. He controlled the ball all the time.
Rising to NBA stardom at the same time was a guard for the Los Angeles Lakers named Jerry West. He and Oscar would forge a legendary rivalry.
West and Robertson were kind of the miniature Chamberlain and Russell. I mean, they were by far the most outstanding guards.
Jerry was a great basketball player. I was more of an inside player, penetrating. He was a tremendous shot.
I used to hear Bird against Johnson. Well, they never guarded each other. Chamberlain against Russell, they guarded each other. Robertson and West, we guarded each other.
Robertson was so much more mature than West in the beginning. And he was so much better than West when they first started. I'm not saying West wasn't good.
It's terrible to feel like somebody has an advantage over you in anything that you do. And there's no question he had an advantage early in my career. After 4 or 5 years, there was definitely a rivalry.
Oscar was a sports hero in Cincinnati. But after a decade as the star of the Royals, he was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks in 1970.
The Milwaukee Bucks have moved from being, I think, a good team to the stature of being a great team with the addition of the big O, Oscar Robertson.
Milwaukee already had one of the game's most dominant big men in Lou Alcindor, later to become Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And the acquisition of Robertson was a perfect fit.
Lou, what has the addition of Oscar Robertson to the Bucks meant to your ball club?
Well, in Oscar, we have somebody that can do the job all the time. You know, we have consistency. We have excellent consistency, you know, which is what we need in the backcourt.
In 1971, just the third year of existence for the expansion Bucks, the Big O finally achieved his dream of winning an NBA championship.
I played against the greatest athletes in the world in basketball that ever will be. No one can ever take that away from me. No money in the world is worth it for me not to play during those times.
Thank you, Bill. Congratulations, buddy. Sit down. Oscar, when you look back on it, here we are again tonight at another great event, and first and foremost, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Is there any accomplishment that, when you have a list like yours, does anything stand out above the others?
I think everything stands out to a certain point. I feel good because I was consistent. I got hurt a few times, but not enough to keep me out of forever. And just to compete, you know. I mean, I think in every athlete's life, you know, you want to compete against the best. And when I first got into the NBA, I competed against the best, and I was very happy about that.
Well, this is a guy that, in quizzing some of his teammates and some of my former teammates, there's no question who the best player in the league was, best all-around talent. He could guard, he could pass, he could shoot it, he could rebound. He did everything. One interesting stat that one of your former Cincinnati Royal teammates told me, and all the time he saw you play, and here's a guy that played against Chamberlain, Russell, and Nate Thurman on the floor at the same time. Never saw you get one of your shots blocked.
Well, I got some of them blocked sometimes, but, you know, but that didn't bother me at all because, you know, they couldn't block them all. And you know, I always felt I had an advantage against a big guy because he had to come out from underneath the basket and guard me. So I could outmaneuver any of those big guys. So it didn't really matter. It just a matter of competing, to be honest.
Well, that you did very well. You could compete just a little bit. So I told Oscar tonight, Patty and I, my wife, we were high school sweethearts, and we had an opportunity to get 2 tickets to see the Cincinnati Royals play the Boston Celtics. And we were in the Dayton area, and probably really weren't supposed to leave town a lot, even though it was only 60 miles away, and definitely not the night before you're taking the ACT exam. at 8 in the morning. But I said, hey, it's Oscar Robertson, it's the Royals versus the Celtics. So she and I went to Cincinnati Gardens, and they upset the Celtics, and Oscar only went for 48. And Patty still remembers the shot he made right before halftime. He said, oh, you didn't remember that, but two guys challenged him at the midline. He threw up a half hook and made it and just walked in the Cincinnati locker room. I said, that guy not only good, that guy's pretty cool.
Well, sometimes they don't go in. You make them, you should act like you did it before, really.
Well, you can't get a better tribute than what Havlicek said. 16 years in the league, toughest guy he had to guard. He's never hesitated on that answer. It's Oscar Robertson. Was there anybody that gave you a particularly hard time that you remember that you didn't like playing against?
Well, a lot of guys gave me a hard time because whenever they had Russell, Nate Thurman, or Wilton in the pivot, they'd press you outside and make you go inside, which was fine because I could pass the ball off. But, there were a lot of guys. When you're not making a shot, people are giving you a hard time. But when you're making a shot, it doesn't matter who's guarding it all.
No, I don't understand that. I haven't shared this story with Oscar tonight, but I got into a game with the Knicks my rookie year, and being from Dayton, I had family down from Dayton. I had friends over from Columbus, had to get a bunch of extra tickets. And I get in with about 5 minutes to go in the first half, and Holzman says, go ahead and just, give this guy a blow and you play out the first half. And so with about 10 seconds to go in the half, we throw the ball away. And I go back on defense, and Oscar has it, and he's coming down the floor. And you made a miraculous fake, Oscar, because that's the only way you would ever gotten by me. But he breezed me, and he's laying it up and in, and I recovered just in time to hack him. And he turned it into a three-point play with 2 seconds left. Now, I know there's a lot of coaches here in the room tonight, and you know what happens when you make a bonehead play right before halftime. What does a coach talk about when you get in the locker room? And Red Holzman just turned on me and told me how horrible I was. And I'm thinking the whole time, well, the guy scored over 20,000 points. I mean, how long are we going to discuss these three? So Red didn't see it that way. He didn't let up. But no, seriously, I mean, when you think about it, because he didn't have the teams that made playoffs and long playoff runs, and to score 26,710 points in your career, just phenomenal numbers.
I've always said that when Maurice Stokes got hurt, that hurt the Royals quite a bit, and we were never able to recover. We played well, but we just didn't have the teams to compete against Wilt and Bill.
Right.
Because I think that you need to have a good bench in order to win championships, no matter what kind of starting five you have, and we didn't have the players.
Oscar, when you look at today's game, I know we never played in the era of the three-point shot, or as I mentioned, ESPN or anything else.
Yes, ESPN.
Right. Or color TV, by the way, but I digress. How do you view the players of today versus some of the greats you played against?
Oh, I think there's a lot of great basketball players today. And, they got this thing, and Bob will like this, Huggins, it's called analytical basketball. That only means it's good if the ball goes in. It's not analytical if you don't make it. But these guys get on TV, ESPN guys, they say analytical ball. It's great. You got a kid like Curry and Thompson making those three-point shots. It's great.
Right.
But if you don't have those players, you can't talk analytical ball at all.
Have you watched a lot of LeBron?
LeBron is a man-child. I mean,
Right.
he's been a man-child all his life. He's so powerful and strong, and he just runs into you, man. Those big arms, and you can't guard him.
Right.
He's such a mild-mannered person. I like to see him get really mad and upset out there one night.
You would?
Yes, I would. Then I don't think guys would foul him so much. But it's right now they take those hard fouls and they'll say, oh, and the referee's got to go to the monitor, stay there for about 3 or 4 minutes and tell whether it's a hard foul or not. I mean, where did they come from? I mean, don't they know what a hard foul is?
And there's 3 refs now. We only played with 2.
Yeah, that's exactly right. 3. I think sometimes they get in the way. But I
A lot of referees over here sitting there out here, Oscar.
Well, the referees never cared for that much for me, to be honest. But I think the game today is a fans' game. They love it. They love the score. like what they did in football. You know, you can't even tackle anybody anymore in football. You know, basketball's almost the same way. You can't breathe on them anymore. You can't run through picks. You can't fight over screens, anything, things like that. When they run through, you got to get out of the way and let them run through to the basket.
What was your experience like with Alcindor?
Kareem was kind of introverted, real quiet, didn't say a word. And we were playing once, and guys were roughing him up, and he was just getting so mad and upset. So we go in the locker room at the halftime. I said, Kareem, I want to talk to you for a minute. I said, why do you think those guys are pushing you and holding you and whatnot? Because you're a great player. If you weren't great, they wouldn't touch you. He understood what I meant then, so he got used to it. He had to get used to it, or else they'd run him out of the league, to be honest.
Well, my roommate Willis Reed was one of those guys that liked to rough him up. So.
Well, yeah, but you know,
because they couldn't guard him otherwise.
Willis had the physique to do that.
Yeah, tell me.
He was a tough individual.
Very tough, very tough. Ladies and gentlemen, I know we have a long evening here tonight, and we have some very deserving inductees coming on board. But it's truly been a pleasure to have Oscar Robertson back in Columbus and be the recipient of our highest heritage award. Oscar, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.